Higher than what?
Well, it's saying that every, white households are lower, black are the same, right? Black households are the same, I think. Hispanic are lower, so where's the difference?
The 10%, which is what you just pointed out.
Somebody's gotta be higher.
I'm sorry,
It'll be lower.
I was,
So
sorry.
on page 35,
Mhm.
there in paragraph, under discussion, paragraph 2, am I right? Within the income range of 30 to, no, I'm not, it's the first paragraph, sorry. For households at or below 30% of the AMI, white households represent a lower percentage, 65% of households with one or more housing problems than the white percentage of the total population, 73%. Black households compose approximately the same percentage of households with one or more housing problems, and of the total population, 15%. Hispanic residents represent approximately 14% of the city's population, but account for 10% of the households with housing problems within this income range. Evelyn, what's the question?
We've got, white households are 65%, black households are 15%, and Hispanic households are 10%. So who's the other 10%?
Could it
Other?
be
Asian?
American Indian?
Is it other?
Pacific
It's
Islander?
not.
Yeah, it's,
Okay.
yeah,
Oh, here it
in
is,
table
right there.
16,
Oh, I see,
yeah.
so they don't want you to, they don't want you to comment on the others. Okay.
Yes, yes,
Yes?
Disproportionately greater need, severe housing problems. Assess the need of any racial or ethnic group that has disproportionately greater need in comparison to the needs of the category, of that category of need as a whole. So our introduction. Wow.
There's some,
Yeah,
in the last one, there's a little bit of math that was missing. I think. I don't know where we
where would you like me to go?
The last page we were just on.
Yep, that's this.
Wait, was there, okay. It's not here, there was another.
I'll go back another one.
Yeah, on the right-hand side, jurisdiction as a whole, 160, white 120, black 35, and then that adds up to 155. And there's no other, we're missing 5.
Oh. Brenda, do you see that on
No.
page 37?
Okay.
In the very first segment there, 0 to 30% of area median income,
Okay.
this isn't adding up. He's saying 160 is the total,
Jurisdiction as a whole.
and
Oh, I see.
155, so it's 120 and 35, 155.
But the middle column is, yeah, the far left column I think is off too, but the middle column is right, so I don't know if there's gonna be another,
These two columns, yeah.
yeah, but the middle
We'll
column.
highlight them. Jen?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that the Complete Count Commission in New York State is talking about the potential for undercounting Latinos and Hispanic in New York by up to 15%. And the census itself, actually, the census.gov actually acknowledges that, even though the administration does not. So we're projecting growth up to over 20% by the next census. So this plan is leading us through that time Is there any way to talk back in the comments or in the analysis that our Hispanic population is growing a lot faster than might actually be represented?
Yes.
Because we're gonna lose money from HUD if we don't count our population.
I don't think we're gonna lose money, but.
We're gonna lose money. Well,
We won't be
Europe-
meeting a need that's evident here that
Right.
isn't reflected in the data.
I mean, all of New York will be losing money, actually. We might even lose a congressional district.
I'm sorry, I thought you
So
were.
we will
yeah.
definitely-
per capita
Yeah,
money
yeah.
for sure.
We will get
Yes.
less HUD money as a
Yes.
result as well. So is there some way to kind of point this out?
We can put whatever we need to in the narrative sections. We're just limited to certain selections and certain data that we use. So yes, the answer is yes.
We'll include that. Great, thanks. Great. Yeah, yeah, we got covered here. Made it down. Okay. Disproportionately greater need discussion. Are there any income categories in which a racial or ethnic group has disproportionately greater need than the needs of that income category as a whole? If they have needs not identified above, what are those needs? Are any of those racial or ethnic groups located in specific areas or neighborhoods in your community? Okay, and as I'm reading categories, I'm just reminding you, we can always look at the answers more closely, so don't hesitate to raise your hand if you want to dig deeper into one of these categories.
Well, Brenna was there again on Tuesday with Guy at the talk, and I guess one of the questions I had is, because African-American households experience an equity gap and then an income gap that's significant, I mean, income especially, is that identified for us in Kingston somehow so that we can?
So the consultant discussed the data that we're allowed to use.
Right, yes, I understand.
So we can discuss that data and add to the discussion.
Yeah.
So the answer is no, but we can. We have not, but we can.
Okay, because I think for sure mobility is a bigger issue for African Americans in Kingston than it is for non-African Americans. And it might be something that we want to identify as they get squeezed in certain census tracts and or in unstable.
Agreed. VHB. I forget that they're-
Voorhees, something and something.
Did they work with the
Renassa,
DRI as well?
something.
Yeah,
Same concept?
Renassa.
yeah. They responded to the RFP. Right?
It's a huge firm out of Westchester.
Okay. Public housing. We have our introduction. I'm gonna read this. Public housing is an important safety net for low-income families and individuals to secure housing and avoid homelessness and instability. In 2008, the Kingston Community Development Agency merged with the Kingston Housing Authority to administer the entire city's Section 8 Housing Choice Vouchers. The combined Section 8 Housing Choice Vouchers in 359, though 186 are being used. There's presently a waiting list of 106. The Kingston Housing Authority is the City of Kingston's public housing authority, which is run by an executive director and a board of directors, independent of the City of Kingston municipal government. The Kingston Housing Authority, KHA, is an organization with a proud history and an enviable reputation. In 1948, its dream of quality, affordable housing for area citizens was formalized, and in 1953 it was put into action with the opening of Colonial Gardens. Over the years, hundreds of apartments were constructed and have provided the foundations for family and elderly communities around Kingston. The KHA presently has 6 housing projects with a total number of units of 481.
Question?
Yep.
So I know that the residents in Rondout Gardens formed a kind of group, tenants group. I don't know if it still exists.
Cassandra Burke was the impetus for that, and she is no longer living in Kingston. I have no idea what the situation is.
There were others involved too.
Certainly, but,
And I've been inside a lot of those apartments as part of my work during the legislature, and many of them were, maybe they're better now, but many of them were not in great condition. And I was just wondering if the residents were reporting that to you as part of this study?
It sounds like they would report directly to their board that's
And their
separate
board is
from the
reporting that to
city.
you? Mold
the
and water
executive-
infiltration
the
and,
executive director would have reported conditions reported by the tenants, I think. The, Kathy Maloney and the board were consulted,
Mhm.
and provided input.
I just didn't see that information in here and,
I can check on it.
because it was, some of it was really pretty deplorable. And some of it was quite nice, but there was a real mix of attention being paid. And I just wanted to make sure that either the tenants were consulted directly or that the conditions were reported or both.
So would would the answer be that the director would be consulted, not the tenants, or that the director would have let?
The answer was the director was consulted, but we can follow up to see.
It was before her time that I saw all that, but I just wanted to make sure that that is being addressed if it's, or heard, if it's still an issue.
Rita, did you have something?
Brenda, can you just shout out the 6 units that KHA has?
Rondout Gardens, Colonial Village, Stuyvesant, Brigham, blanking.
I thought it was 4, but that said 6.
They're listed.
Will
So the other 6? Oh, I just
Fair-
kept
and
reading.
Fairview.
Okay.
Where?
Is it Fairview over by Forsyth?
On Albany Avenue.
So, I believe there's another part of the document that refers to other housing trust voucher programs in the city. And I guess that I would encourage that the narrative here include what's called the utilization rate, to just clarify what that is for the Kingston Housing Authority and for RUPCO, to identify what the utilization rate is. This is, yeah, that's basically just tells you the percentage of those vouchers that are successfully utilized by tenants. And I think that's a concern that ought to be addressed. The utilization rate for the city is significantly different than it is for RUPCO.
Oh, right.
Meaning that there are a lot of vouchers that go unused from the city.
And
We have, and
the
that's a
reason
concern.
for that were mentioned lesson.
Ted,
Yeah.
later in the document, there's a list of the housing. Do you know what page that's on by chance?
I don't.
Okay, so Rita will flag it when we get there.
What was the question?
What the list of public housing locations are in.
It's on page 42.
Thank you.
Is it there?
No, it's, we're on page 42.
Yeah, I'm thinking that could be expressed in the narrative there,
The listing,
the
the,
utilization.
okay.
Yeah.
Great.
So the concern that we might have about that is that that means that there are vouchers that either can't be used for one reason or another, but often the issue has been source discrimination, which has been recently addressed by the state legislature. But what it means is that there's a resource that's coming into this community that lays fallow because it's not actually deployed to any benefit. That's kind of scary when we're talking housing, right?
Yeah.
So in addition to the rate, we kind of want to know why as well.
Well, it does point to a concern and an issue that is going to require some attention, is my point. There may be all kinds of reasons for that. We don't care what they are and address it.
Actually, on page
or 45, there's a paragraph that says, like, explains why 80% of them are on the waiting list, I think.
That's what it says.
Right under most immediate needs.
So for most immediate needs of residents of public housing and housing choice voucher holders, shall I read it?
Sure.
The needs of families and individuals on the waiting list for public housing and housing choice voucher holders is difficult to assess because the organization of the selection process does not allow for complete needs assessment. After completing an application, a basic financial eligibility review is conducted. Only when an opening is available is a more thorough screening conducted where a full background check is performed. At this time, applicants can be removed from the eligibility list based upon criminal records, which is the case in as many as 80% of cases for the housing choice voucher waiting list. Wow.
Well, that tells a part of the story, but the other part of the story is that those vouchers that are therefore unused ought to be redeployed and put into service for folks who are eligible for the program. And that seems to be the failing.
The Department of Social, did you get that?
I'm gonna have to read.
No, I totally set it up.
The Department of Social Services or Family of Woodstock
Oh, good.
is offered to
Okay.
individuals needing immediate assistance
Yeah.
because KHA, Kingston Housing Authority, does not provide services to individuals or families until they are fully vetted into the program. There is no tracking of individuals who are waiting to become residents of the authority or receive a housing voucher. Identified concerns of residents fall into several categories and vary based upon the neighborhood in which complex is located. Capital improvements to each facility to maintain the quality of life for residents and structural integrity of the property are essential because of the age of the complexes. Ongoing capital improvement will require a significant infusion of resources. There is presently a waiting list of 106 for housing choice vouchers. And this is based on what year? This number-ish?
It was input from KHA for now,
For now,
yeah,
because some of the language
but it
is,
might have changed.
right, is outdated, I've noticed.
Yeah,
In terms of where like a project is in construction or, so I'm curious if that number is higher.
So I just wanted to clarify, so the housing choice vouchers, is this only for those on the Kingston Housing Authority waiting list?
yeah,
And does it also include REPCO?
so I just mentioned to Guy that the comment period is still open, and I spoke with Kathy Germain, so she's providing comments, she has not provided them yet, so they're not incorporated into this
Go
yet,
back to
so.
Kathy Tremaine as opposed to Kathy Maloney, right?
Yes, so I'm talking Rupco, Kathy has not provided her comments yet, so these are only KHA Kathy comments.
Okay.
So it's just a piece of the story, it's not the whole story.
Right.
And there are differentials to the stories from the different administrators of the program, and that was a point that I was trying to make. Hope that helps.
Yeah. The needs of housing choice voucher holders, a program administered through the Kingston Housing Authority, vary, but a chronic issue is the shortage of adequate and safe housing that will accept recipients or meet the housing standards acceptable for placement. In addition, residents of public housing and housing choice voucher holders are in need of managed care and training. The greatest identified problem by the recipients of the program, once attaining
Okay.
a voucher is a lack of family sustaining employment opportunities in the city. Jobs and employment training are among the most immediate needs of these residents. Residents are also in need of mental health managed care and behavioral training to assist with community integration. Through 359 housing choice vouchers were awarded to the program this year.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I just would love to see in addition to that sentence above, that where it speaks to mental health services, that it also talks about supportive services. That would be my suggestion.
In the HUD sense of the term, right?
Yes.
Did I get that
So,
right?
yeah, supportive services. Which, for those of you who are unaware, supportive housing is a term that HUD uses and which is what was defined as the type of housing for the alms house. Right?
Well, that's true.
So did I highlight the right section?
Yeah, that's the right place to,
Okay.
I would love to see that inserted there, because it's absolutely a term of the providers of supportive housing units.
I just wanted to
Make
get,
sense?
yeah, did you get that?
I'm highlighting it and then I'm not, you wanted to say it?
I have it highlighted.
Okay, will you say that again, what it should say, added?
Right,
I'm
and
gonna
right
read this.
that
and
paragraph.
so-
I'm suggesting that where it says,
Residents who are alternative mental health.
right, after mental health,
No.
so just say supportive services.
Okay,
I just want to
It's called supportive,
amplify that a little bit.
supportive
Because
services.
there are folks that need all kinds of different
Oh,
services, not just mental health.
supportive services are like-
Is that helpful?
yeah.
Okay.
Great. I just want to say to anyone who is on Facebook streaming, that if you have questions, we welcome them and following along. So please don't be shy. Though 359 housing choice vouchers were awarded to the program this year, the program only uses 186 due to lack of resources. Guy, is this what you were referring to? I just want to highlight that.
Does that mean that the difference are people who need housing but aren't able to get into the program, or is the 359 assigned because of other criteria? That 359, that refers to there are 359 people who want.
I apologize, I really didn't hear the question.
So the 359 refers to that there are 359 people right now who need housing through the
Well,
program?
no, that refers to the number of vouchers, that's the whole number of vouchers that the Kingston Housing Authority can administer and is responsible for. And the number that are actually utilized is a fraction of that. There's always going to be some number of vouchers that are in a transition from someone who was previously eligible because someone moved out of the area, if their voucher was imported to another jurisdiction. But there are a couple of reasons that those vouchers go unused. One is that there aren't available units of housing that meet housing quality standards for which a voucher can be utilized. Sometimes it's just because they've not been administered properly by the administrator to take them from sitting on the shelf and put them in the hands of another eligible tenant. And that's a real concern. And that's a very low utilization rate for a program of that size. That's my point.
Okay.
According to the program administrator, the program has some difficulty finding landlords legally registered with the City of Kingston landlord registration, and who will participate with the program. Landlord registration is a local law that requires annual building and safety inspections. The program also struggles with identifying suitable families for the program because many meet income eligibility but fail eligibility standards due to sex offender status or prior drug convictions. Special needs voucher holders have an especially difficult time finding accessible units that meet all of their standards, all of the standards. So I'm going to continue to read through just the headings. If you'd like to go deeper in, raise your hand and we'll do that. How do these needs compare to the housing needs of the population at large? and in discussion. Homeless needs assessment, introduction.
I have a question. The common council's been doing those hearings. Are those going to be included in this?
Is that a yes?
Yes.
Yeah,
And how does the point in time data factor into this?
Can you say that
The,
louder?
How does the point in time survey data that was gathered in January factor into this?
I think it might be mentioned in a narrative part, but that data is reported through the continuum of care reporting and contract management.
Okay, but it won't be incorporated in here because that seems like something to mention.
It seems like
It's something to mention, especially those numbers have changed
We
from
can-
last year.
we can definitely do that.
The question being,
Uh,
check our numbers,
Include the pit count.
include the pit count.
mhm.
Yeah?
Can you go back to the first chart that had like the breakdown of the homelessness numbers?
It's just for them.
I can't read what's the data source comments underneath this chart.
So it says,
It does say pit report.
data source comments,
Okay,
data
so
provided,
it's very
yeah,
small.
But it's
from
from
the
2018.
pit.
Okay.
Report conducted 1/29/2018. It is estimated that had the study been conducted 6 months later, the unsheltered homeless numbers would be higher, taking into account weather conditions. No, thank you. That answered the question.
Yeah.
Thanks. Okay, nature and extent of homelessness? Optional?
We opted to.
You estimate the number and type of families in need of housing assistance for families with children and the families of veterans. Describe the nature and extent of homelessness by racial and ethnic group.
That's the green.
Yeah.
You know,
Jenny?
I was just wondering about the Patriot House. It seems to be underutilized.
What does?
The Patriot House. It's around the corner from my house.
Okay.
Better
And
than
it has
homeless
8 bedrooms or 8 beds, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it seems very underutilized, and I'm just wondering, I know it's the county, but I'm wondering if there's some way of reflecting that that's, an issue.
Under the veterans section here.
Or getting input from the county as to what's going on there, because it's not,
What's the question?
the lights are out, nobody's home.
Okay, so the question being underutilized.
The Patriot House it says there what it has, what it provides, but it doesn't say anything
I
about
see.
the fact that it doesn't appear to be utilized, so I'm wondering if there's some way of getting the data on that, or not the data, getting some anecdotal information on how that could be better utilized.
I see. Okay.
Comments in some of the continuum of care board meetings are that there are a significant number of veterans who choose not to be housed
Right.
for various reasons, and we should certainly mention that and why.
So could it in that case be used for other homeless people, or is that not?
I don't know if there are qualifications attached to the funds that were used to build it that might prevent that
Okay.
from being housing other populations.
But what you just said is really important, so can you say that again about finding out if veterans, whether or not they'll be housed or not, right?
There are
That's a
many veterans who choose not to be
to.
housed for various mental health reasons or just, anecdotal conversations at continuum of care board
And just
meetings.
that's great. All right.
Connie, are you writing that or should I write that down?
I'm doing the best I can. And I'm gonna be listening to this over again tonight and then going through it again.
But you could also send it around to some of us to give you, flush it out.
It's a Google Doc, so we can definitely share it and people can work on.
And I'll spend a few hours this evening, I'm recording it, I'll re-listen. I'm doing it, this is basically gonna serve as an outline until a few hours from now, and then I'll fill it in more.
Okay.
Um,
I'm also highlighting it, so we'll get it in there.
Yeah, it'll get there.
Describe the nature and extent of homelessness by racial and ethnic group. Describe the nature and extent of unsheltered and sheltered homelessness. An estimated 464 persons experience homelessness on a given night, and all except 32 of these persons are sheltered. All but 6 persons in households with both adults and children are sheltered, while all children in households with only children are sheltered. 26 out of 103 persons in adult-only households are unsheltered. Non-homeless special needs assessment. Describe the characteristic of special needs populations in your community. What are the housing and supportive service needs of these populations, and how are these needs determined? Discuss the size and characteristics of the population with HIV, AIDS, and their families within the eligible metropolitan statistical area.
Is that information you're still waiting on?
I'm sorry, what?
The information about the population with HIV/AIDS?
Is it information we're still waiting on?
Yeah, is that based on, that's based on the New York State the annual surveillance report. What I would notice about this that confused me when I read it is that there is a federal program which is like the Housing Choice Voucher program that serves in one, I'm thinking of HAPA, which RUPCO administers, and also the VASH program, which is a Veterans Administration voucher program. So there ought to be data available to you to include in both of those two sections.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great.
And it can be drilled down to Kingston, I'm pretty sure. Yeah. Sure. And with that, I actually have to go.
Oh, no.
Enjoy this.
Thank you.
You
A lot of help.
You can live stream this.
Non-housing community development needs. Describe the jurisdiction's need for public facilities. So one of the comments that came through is in public facilities, the Kingston Library was missing from the public facilities that was listed. It was highlighted already, and it's accounted for as a question.
I'm sorry.
So under public facilities inside of the document,
Oh, as a list of projects funded?
Is that why?
No, I don't know. Yeah, so I believe the list that you would have seen later in the document are the list of projects funded in the 2019 fiscal year.
I see.
So included in this first 5-year document, the first annual action plan is also included.
Okay,
Does that make sense?
yep,
Okay.
thank you.
Sure.
Describe the jurisdiction's need for public improvements. How are the needs determined? And describe the jurisdiction's need for public services.
So under describe the jurisdiction's need for public improvements, can you read that paragraph?
Sure.
Thank you.
So, public services such as programs
No,
targeted.
public improvements, sorry, Rebecca.
Sorry.
Here, right?
Thank you.
Of course. Public improvements are those improvements that do not qualify under a more specific category of improvements such as neighborhood center, but it is used for general improvements to public spaces. In the city of Kingston, there are many cultural institutions that serve to foster an improved economic development climate and stabilize neighborhoods, such as Transart, an African American Cultural Center and Historic Preservation Project under development on Henry Street in Midtown, the library at the A.J. Williams Myers African Roots Center, the Kingston Green Line currently under development, Barman Park, or the Ulster Performing Arts Center, UPAC, on the Broadway corridor. These public improvements support far-reaching goals. You can listen. What struck you?
It just, yeah, I mean, I guess it's missing to me, some of the things like for the youth.
Right,
So, like,
CCD.
Yeah, like a lot.
Those are funded under public services.
Oh, so it's in another section of the,
This is like structural.
Okay.
It's buildings and spaces
Like parks
and,
and.
yeah.
Physical sites.
Right.
locations.
Right,
so we're gonna get
but
there.
the programs and services are in the next section.
Right.
That still seems like a little bit like me,
Was the
I
swimming
wanna,
pool in Kingston
review
Point
the doc,
parking lot
like,
mentioned?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Not here, but it was mentioned earlier today.
We're not cool.
We actually, there's a grant, there's a
54.
parks grant.
Just for Rich, she does?
Yeah.
Great, okay,
To relocate.
great.
Relocate that parking area.
Rita and Jeffrey, do you have anything to
When
add?
you
or-
say floodplain?
Jeffrey
Say wetlands?
actually answered the question.
Okay.
They are.
Yeah. Describe a jurisdiction's need for public services and how are these needs determined?
Well, for improvements, if they wanted to, if they had any capital improvements.
So for Rashida, how were these needs determined? On the same page, on page 54. Highlight it.
It's not.
Part of something.
I wish I had more comments in this document, but I should have gotten them.
Put goals.
Yeah. I cannot do yet.
Oh, okay.
It's okay. We'll do it a bit. Look at mine, I don't have that.
Okay.
Number of housing units, introduction. So this section describes the number, type, and tenure of housing in Kingston and whether these housing units meet the needs of city residents. Provide an assessment of units expected to be lost from the affordable housing inventory for any reason, such as expiration of Section 8 contracts. Does the availability of housing units meet the needs of the population? So in June of 2009, the planning departments of Ulster, Orange, and Dutchess counties published the 3-county housing needs assessment of 2006 to 2020, which included a gap analysis on a regional, county, and municipal level. Housing supply inventory was compared to demand by income and tenure status, owner and renter, which revealed if demand exceeds supply, and if so, at what extent by household income level. Gaps are an indication that the number of units available at an affordable price are not sufficient, and households will likely pay more than the 30% cost burden threshold of household income toward housing costs. The City of Kingston has and is projected to continue to have the most pronounced affordability gaps for both owners and renters of the 21 municipalities in the county.
Can you explain how those dates work? So in June 2009, they published a report about 2006 through 2020.
Yeah, so they were projecting out to 2020.
Okay.
So has the data been updated then since?
No, it has not been updated.
So it's kind of a guesstimate?
Well, I wouldn't say it's a guesstimate, it's a little bit more scientific than that, based on population trends, and, but that's just those are the years that are essentially covered by the analysis.
But it's still 10-year-old data.
They should do another, but they need to get funding for it.
Is this the study that said that we needed something like 1,000
Yes.
units and we built
Yeah.
55?
Yes.
Why not put that in that paragraph?
Yeah.
Instead of saying
Yeah, I
that.
would go into some more detail about that.
That's.
The shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line.
I mean, it's still, everything that was said in that report is still true and more so.
So Evelyn, what's the question?
I'm just saying, why don't we put that very stark conclusion and
Like
the
the study
numbers in this
said.
paragraph, rather than saying that the report assessed whether there were gaps or not, which this paragraph we should be wondering.
Refer
The study
to
said you needed 1,000 new units, the city built 55,
Yeah,
period.
it's really quite dire, and this
Yeah.
doesn't reflect that.
Good.
Describe the need for specific types of housing. And again, if you want me to read, I will read, otherwise I'm gonna keep moving. I also just want to say it's now 7:15, and I'd like to keep going, if you all agree. So much for those 15-minute breaks, but please feel free to get up and use the bathroom or get coffee or tea. Thanks. Is that okay for everyone?
Yes.
Yeah.
So the discussion. The affordability gap documented in the 3-county housing needs assessment of 2006 through 2020 indicates that there is a need for more units and more affordable units to meet the housing demand in Kingston. Market analysis, housing market analysis, cost of housing. A significant number of homeowners with mortgages and renters are considered cost burden. According to 2009-2013 American Community Survey data, the median value of owner-occupied housing units was $171,500, a 98% increase from year 2000. The median contract rent was $854, a 64% increase over the year 2000. Or she just jump up if there's anything you want me to dig in, okay?
That was adjusted for inflation.
Are those amounts adjusted for inflation?
Adjusted for inflation.
For inflation?
I believe they are with American Community Survey.
Who asked that question?
Sebastian. vacant units, 0. So, note on vacant properties, there's no official list of vacant properties. The Kingston City Land Bank does retain ownership of 37 vacant properties in the city. Jenny?
Yeah, there actually are data from the, is it the Attorney General's office? They track vacancy and.
That's, it's confidential. The list that we get from Department of Financial
But they have
Services.
numbers. They say that there's
Yeah.
something like,
There's
any
about,
given
there's
time.
anywhere between 95 and 100 probably vacant mortgage foreclosed properties in the
Right.
city.
I mean, maybe just including the magnitude.
Yeah,
the-
I agree.
Adding. And also, what about properties that are either in foreclosure or at any given time? Is that somewhere else, or,
I don't think that's listed here.
because I believe the number's somewhere around 200, right? Maybe more.
That are in pre-foreclosure
At
or
any given
foreclosure
time or
process.
in foreclosure.
Um,
I know it's about, I know it's somewhere around,
What was the question, Jen?
the question is, are you reflecting foreclosures as well?
So I'm not sure that we can actually change these data units. I think this is another, pulling the data from Chaz, and so we can't plug different numbers in, but as it's discussed down here, we can add those numbers to the note on vacant properties.
Okay. Just because I think it's good for,
Yeah.
to tell the story.
Yes.
Need for owner and rental rehabilitation. Estimated number of housing units occupied by low or moderate income families with LBP hazards. What is it,
Lead-based paint.
LBP?
Lead-based paint.
Lead-based paint. Yes, there it is. Thank you. So the discussion, the presence of lead-based paint is a major health concern in households with young children. Yes. Resiliency, waterfront flooding task force to study sea level rise and flood projections in 2013. City also published a climate action plan in September of 2012.
So question, how is resiliency defined for the grant? Is it only in terms of, like the physical structures of the city, like waterfront, planning, and for climate change? Or is it also referring to economic resiliency and community resiliency?
I think so this resiliency section was provided mainly by the Kingston Climate Smart Commission. And I think the primary focus is on environmental, physical, environmental, but we can certainly add some.
It doesn't look at the social vulnerability index that is a part of most resiliency studies. The task force didn't do that. We just looked at, I wish we had, but it wasn't part of the scope of work.
But maybe there might be another task force and have that.
There is another task force looking at that, and but it's not gonna come up in this report, right?
Public and assisted housing. Describe the supply of public housing developments. Describe the number and physical condition of public housing units in the jurisdiction, including those that are participating in an improved public housing agency plan. And I'll just read this little brief description. The Kingston Public Housing Authority, KHA, manages 481 units of housing located in 3 neighborhoods of the city. There are 359 tenant-based housing choice vouchers in use managed by Kingston Housing Authority, and approximately 500 more within the city managed by RECVO. Public housing conditions, there we go. Describe the restoration restoration and revitalization needs of public housing units in the jurisdiction. Describe the public housing agency's strategy for improving the living environment of low and moderate income families residing in public housing. And the discussion, there's a strong demand for quality housing choices in the city of Kingston, and the Kingston Housing Authority fulfills an important need. Given the average age of the housing units, significant investment will be needed in the coming years to maintain the housing and provide needed accessibility enhancements. Jenny?
Maybe I'm anticipating, but does the KHA actually articulate the numbers of investment that's required? Rather than this statement of significant investment to say the KHA projects the following.
No, I think Kathy's working on a strategic plan or needs assessment that we don't have numbers right now.
Is it possible to at least identify in the narrative that that is being done? And
Sure.
because they did have prior, like for example, even just identifying what it has been generally, historically, so that there would be some sense of that in here.
Well, there is above in a paragraph that Rebecca didn't read, it says the KHA specifically cited the need for restoration and revitalization of complex roofs, apartment painting, sidewalk improvements, upgrades to heat and hot water systems, new windows, and individual thermostats.
But there's no budget number.
But there's no budget numbers yet.
But
It says, describe the need for an engineering study for new underground.
What page is that?
It's, my pages are different because it's,
65.
Okay.
thank you.
There's also something about like outstanding accessibility improvement requests that I don't know if they've been fulfilled or not. That's on page 45.
Okay.
There's like 156
Wow.
or something.
Memorize the page.
I just noticed it before. It's above the highlighted paragraph.
Okay. Here?
Yeah, that it costs about that per unit, and how many units? 37 units now.
Modifications to units average approximately 25 to 30,000 per unit at a time when public dollars for such capital investment is in decline.
Because they built on little hills with little stoops.
What page was that?
45.
The old little
Thanks,
stoops.
Ted.
Welcome.
Except for one.
Okay, so. Yep, there. Describe mainstream services such as health, mental health, and employment services to the extent that those services are used
That's a HUD.
to complement
Typo.
services targeted to homeless persons. Okay,
As is complement.
okay. This is the same thing as what Guy pointed out before.
Yes.
Okay. Special needs facilities and services, including the elderly, frail elderly, persons with disabilities, mental, physical, developmental, persons with alcohol or other drug addictions, persons with HIV/AIDS and their families, public housing residents, and any other categories the jurisdiction may specify and describe their supportive housing needs. Describe programs for ensuring that persons returning from mental and physical health institutions receive appropriate supportive housing. Specify the activities that the jurisdiction plans to undertake during the next year to address the housing and supportive services needs identified in accordance with 91.215 with respect to persons who are not homeless but have other special needs, linked to one-year goal.
So is there anything in this section on people returning from incarceration?
No.
So that's a question.
Have other special needs.
Okay.
Maybe the next, so for entitlement consortia grantees, specify the activities that the jurisdiction plans to undertake during the next year to address the housing and supportive services needs identified in accordance with 91-215 with respect to persons who are not homeless but have other special needs. They're not homeless when they're housed in jail,
Until
and if
they're
they,
released.
right, so it could probably go there.
The negative effects of public policies on affordable housing and residential investment. So, additional public sector barriers include rising taxes, school crowding and costs, which increase pressure to restrict the number of housing projects. Regulatory requirements beyond the scope of county and municipal officials, such as SEEKR, State Environmental Quality Review Act, which is viewed as a costly regulatory barrier to the creation of affordable housing in New York State. A shortage throughout the city of new housing and new affordable housing. Land is also expensive and it is difficult to develop affordable housing without some subsidies or program to help offset these costs. I'm going to read one more paragraph and then you can speak. The City of Kingston Planning Department has removed many local barriers to producing affordable housing. A streamlined review process has made the approval process easier and has eliminated significant costs. So we've had plenty of questions, as you've heard, and I've seen some of your responses already, just questioning seeker law, and also streamlining of processes. Brent, I've seen some of your answers to those things.
Yeah, Tanya sent an email.
Yep, and there's plenty of questions that address those things that have come up, so they're in the document, and you've seen
So
some.
we can look at the responses to the,
Yep,
so I just was wondering, for those who haven't seen them and since we're streaming and so on, to say that seeker is viewed as a costly regulatory barrier, it's a passive voice. So viewed by whom? So I think it's really, it's kind of, the language could be maybe more specific if in fact that's the case. I was wondering if you responded to that question.
The consultant responded, did you,
Okay.
yeah,
can you
So I-
respond?
sure. So, I'm just trying to see from where.
Well, I've got it from the analysis of impairments where it was mentioned, oh no, here it is, down here.
Okay, I have it printed out. Which one should we read? Regulatory requirements beyond the scope of county and municipal officials such as the State Environmental Quality Review Act, SEEKR, which is viewed as a costly regulatory barrier to the creation of affordable housing in New York State. The consultant answered, the SEEKR environmental review timeframes and regulations at times have an unintended effect of elongating the approval process and requiring additional costly studies that developers need to incur. Low to moderate income housing projects tend to have tight budgets, and these additional costs can sometimes prevent a project from moving forward. So, so we're getting an answer to this question, and I think what we need to do is this an official response to the question about seeker?
It was a response to Tanya's email. We can incorporate that and whatever else you feel we need to incorporate into the.
Okay.
I just, in anywhere south of here, especially where 250 or more units, and that threshold was higher before, it was 500 units and 1,000 parking. It's just considered the cost of doing business for developers. It's a part of doing business. It is our environmental law, so I just think characterizing it negatively in a report that's from a municipality about, I think we just have to be careful about how we talk about what is considered something that protects the environment, social, and economic factors in our community.
Right.
For our community to officially say this, when it's viewed by whom. I just think we have to be careful about that, about how
Can
it's
we
being
put the
characterized.
information in that speaks to the threshold when seeker is required?
Say that
If it's
again?
500 units, is there a